Okay, so this is where we left off yesterday. I don't think we actually talked about this part of it, but we did leave off with recording the crime scene. Ah, there we are. All right, so anything in blue is what you have to write, so nothing on this screen. The date and time of photos would need to be in the notes somewhere. Camera positions should be recorded so that if any point they want to go back and look at that exact picture, they know where to stand. And so I don't know if you've ever seen crime scene photos like that, though, is the people, decades after will go back and take the crime scene photos over again to show the progression of time in that crime scene area. So if I can find any of those, I will show them to you because they're pretty interesting. All right, the note taker has to keep in mind that their computer is dying. That this is a written record that may be the only source of information for refreshing one's memory months, perhaps years, after a crime has been processed. The notes have to be sufficiently detailed to anticipate this need. So we did crime scene sketches already, and we talked about some of the major aspects being the rough draft and then the final draft. I will remind you guys that if your phones are out during this time, and I can see them because I have eyeballs, I will be taking off points for your employability grade for that. So keep those put up, please. All right. Move this bar. There we go. So you would have a final draft and a rough draft, and the rough draft looks much different because it's sloppier, but the final draft has some key things on it as well. You don't necessarily have to have the dimensions on a final draft because a final draft is just to see the overall picture. The dimensions would be on the rough draft if that would be needed. So they have two different purposes. They would also show to scale. Hopefully we'll get there, but we have not done it to scale yet, where things are in the room as compared to other things and the victims. All right, so a Leica geosystem. This produces products and systems for surveying and geographical measurements. The product used GPS and satellites, laser range fingers to model structures and terrains that are accurate within 1 centimeter. My grandfather uses these to survey property. That's just something he does in his spare time because it's such an interesting hobby, is survey properties to see where someone's property lies so they can do different construction things. And so this is something that we would use for a crime scene because then you could very specifically locate it on a map. All right, I. We are at the I today. Identify. My pencil. We are going to identify through collection and preliminary testing. Experienced investigators know that it is important at a crime scene. So what are we going to identify? Lots of things. So an experienced investigator is going to be able to identify what's important, what's not. And so that's where detectives and investigators have a little bit of skill that is important to this. It's not just education. It has to be natural ability too. Because if you can't naturally determine what's important and what's not, it's going to guide the case in a different direction. So not just anybody is going to be a very good detective. This skill could be honed and it can be learned, but it's got to be something that somebody tries at if they don't have that natural ability. You're not going to be able to just go in and do a detective's job with no training. So it requires experience and observation skills. All right, P. This is our last P, package. We have to package everything separately, all that evidence. When we do our first crime scene, we're not going to package and collect evidence, but we will when a couple of crime scenes down, all right? So why would we want to package things separately? Yeah, to not cause cross-contamination. Hello.
No, you have a mic.
I have a couple.
You have a couple
I
mics?
have two that I found in the desk and was like, I want to use these. And just, one of my students was trying to figure it out. I have no idea what I was doing. Okay. I've never used them, so I might not have put very much effort into it because I had no idea.
Okay, so this one.
All right, moving back to it. So why are we going to separately package things? To prevent cross-contamination as much as possible. So it's going to really cut down on who's touched what. I think this is easier for us to understand in COVID world just because, I mean, it's so specific about who can be around who when they have COVID and like you have to quarantine, but they don't because it's secondary contamination, blah, 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 blah. That's the same thing with crime scenes. They're trying to prevent the spread of contamination, whether it be fingerprints, hair, skin molecules, whatever, as much as possible. So we are going to separately package everything at a crime scene. When we go to collect evidence in a crime scene in a couple of months, it's going to be really tedious work because it's going to be a lot of evidence. All right, so this evidence is protected by a seal. Investigator's name and initial should be on this across the seal. And it looks like I want you to write this at some point in my life. I put that there.
You don't happen to have a double of that.
I happen to have one in my pocket, and I don't know why. It's there, and it fell out this morning. All right, so once it's closed and sealed, we are going to write our name and date across the seal to prove that it has not been broken or tampered with.
You don't have a second one, do you?
I do.
That's awesome. It works.
It works.
It's very loud.
Okay.
But that one works.
Awesome, thank you.
Not a problem.
Now you guys get to hear me very loudly. Nick is so excited.
No.
All right, the last letter is T, and Drew, I'll catch you up on these in just a moment. We're just finishing from yesterday.
Yeah.
T is for transfer, move evidence with care. Obviously. But you know what? At some point in history, this had to be spelled out for us because somebody didn't do this right. So rules are made because people didn't do things the way they were supposed to. All right, so when transferring evidence, what must we do? List all people who come in contact with said evidence. So this is going to include any people who came in and found the crime scene initially, because we're going to assume the forensic investigators are not the ones that came in and found this evidence. It's probably going to be somebody who came upon it on accident. So they need to be listed and their contact information gathered from this. Yeah, Isaiah, scoot over to the desk next to you.
Oh, no.
just to be, safe. Thank you. Ow.
The switch on the right side or on the left side?
There we go.
Or talking to it.
You guys are going to be so annoyed. I really don't need it for this class because you guys are so quiet. My freshman classes are insanely loud.
That's freshman.
They are very loud. But obviously, the juniors, seniors, I can talk over real easily. I'm practically screaming by the end of the day, and I'm over it. Okay. And that is all of our crime scene notes. So, I'll give you these. You want to catch up on them?